Is this some kind of stunt? Gunnery Sergeant Jackson roared, his voice slicing through the heavy quiet of the range. His eyes weren't on his Marines, but on the elderly man standing calmly behind the firing line. Do you even realize where you are, sir? Ezekiel Washington, 80 years old, dressed in a faded flannel shirt and weathered khakis, stood unmoved. In his hands, he held a cloth-wrapped object, his stance steady, his dark eyes sharp as they scanned the range at Fort Hawthorne. The flags fluttered in conflicting patterns, a puzzle the Marines' cutting-edge gear couldn't solve. This is a live-fire range for Force Recon snipers, Jackson pressed, stepping closer. He was the picture of a modern Marine, lean, confident, decked out in tactical gear with a ballistic computer strapped to his wrist, a device worth more than Ezekiel's old pickup. Civilians aren't allowed. You need to leave. Now. Ezekiel's gaze shifted from the rolling hills of the Virginia range to the gunnery sergeant. His eyes, deep and weathered, absorbed Jackson's intensity without returning it. Wind's complicated today, he said, his voice a low, steady baritone. It's not one current, it's three. Jackson let out a sharp, disbelieving laugh. A few younger Marines shifted uneasily. They'd been struggling all morning, their advanced wind meters spitting out erratic data, their ballistic solvers failing to account for the shifting air. The target, a steel plate at 1,800 yards, seemed unreachable. The exercise was meant to test their limits, mimicking the brutal conditions of high-altitude shots in places like the Hindu Kush or the Syrian desert. So far, the wind was winning. 3 wins, huh? Jackson scoffed, folding his arms. With all due respect, sir, we've got tech for that. We're dealing with Coriolis effect, spin drift, and pressure shifts every few minutes. It's a bit more than squinting at the breeze. Ezekiel gave a small, unperturbed shrug. Your computer can't see the thermal rising off that ridge at 1,200 yards, or the crosswind dipping through that gully on the right. That flag at the target? It's misleading you. Shows a right-to-left gust, but there's a reverse current just before it, your bullets crossing 3 different streams. One of the younger Marines, Lance Corporal Carter, lowered his spotting scope. He'd been watching the mirage twist and shift all morning, and Ezekiel's words rang true. The heat waves moved differently at varying distances, but he kept quiet. Challenging Gunnery Sergeant Jackson wasn't an option. Jackson's jaw tightened, his pride stung. This old man, who he'd seen tending the grounds near the Arlington barracks, was schooling him on precision shooting. "And I suppose you could do better?" he challenged, nodding at the wrapped object in Ezekiel's hands. "What's that? Your granddad's hunting rifle?" Slowly, Ezekiel unwrapped the object. It wasn't a sleek modern sniper rifle with carbon fiber and digital optics. It was an M1 Garand, its walnut stock darkened by time, scarred from years of use. The simple scope atop it lacked the complex turrets of the Marines' rifles. It was a weapon from another era, carried by a sentinel who once stood watch at the tomb of the unknown soldier. The sniper stared. The M1 Garand was history, a relic from World War II and Korea seen only in documentaries or armory displays. To see it here, held by this old man, was unreal. Jackson chuckled, incredulous. "You're joking. You think that old thing can hit the target? The barrel's probably shot out." He pointed at a deep scratch on the stock. "Look at this. It's a museum piece. You'll hurt yourself." At Jackson's gesture toward the scarred stock, Ezekiel's mind flickered. The Virginia sun faded, replaced by the gray drizzle of a Korean hillside, 1951. He was 24, no longer the stoic tomb guard, but a young soldier, prone in the mud, his M1 Garand steady despite the cold seeping into his bones. The scratch Jackson mocked was fresh then, carved by a grazing bullet during a night ambush. Through the scope, he'd tracked an enemy officer 900 yards away, a figure directing a machine gun nest that threatened his platoon. The wind swirled, deceptive, cutting through the pines. Ezekiel read it, not with tools but by the slant of rain, the quiver of a branch. He exhaled, squeezed the trigger, and the shot landed true, silencing the threat. The memory dissolved, leaving him back on the range, the sun harsh and unrelenting. Ezekiel's expression remained calm, but his presence grew heavier. The rifle wasn't just wood and steel. It was an extension of him. Jackson's mockery didn't land. Lance Corporal Carter watched, a knot forming in his gut. He respected the chain of command, but something about Jackson's disrespect felt wrong. He'd seen Ezekiel around Arlington for years, always quiet, always meticulous, tending the grounds near the tomb. Whispers among the older Marines hinted at a legend, a tomb guard who'd once been more than a caretaker. Jackson, now fully riled, doubled down. "I'm not asking again, sir. This is a restricted area. You're a safety hazard. Put that rifle down and step back." Carter acted. "Gunny," he said, standing. "My scope's acting up. Reticle's off. Maybe the heat got to it. Permission to run it to the armory for a check." Jackson, irritated, waved him off. "Fine. Get it fixed. We're not leaving until we hit that target." Carter grabbed his scope and jogged off, but not to the armory. Behind a row of Humvees, he pulled out his phone and dialed. "Armory, Master Gunnery Sergeant Brooks speaking," came the gruff reply. "Master Guns, it's Lance Corporal Carter, Bravo Company. I'm at Shenandoah Range with Gunny Jackson's team. You're not gonna believe this, but that old groundskeeper from Arlington, Ezekiel Washington, is here with an M1 Garand, and Jackson's about to have him arrested for trespassing." Silence stretched on the line. Then Brooks's voice sharpened. "You said Ezekiel Washington at Shenandoah Range? Right now?" "Yes, Master Guns." "Carter, do not let Jackson touch him. Do whatever it takes. I'm making a call." The line went dead. Colonel Samuel Reed, commanding officer of Fort Hawthorne's Special Operations Training Center, was slogging through a logistics briefing when his aide, Captain Torres, burst in. "Sir, priority call from Master Gunnery Sergeant Brooks. He says it's a Shenandoah protocol." Reed's brow furrowed. No such protocol existed, but Brooks wasn't one for dramatics. He grabbed the phone. "This is Reed." His posture stiffened as he listened, his grip tightening. "Who's there? Say that name again." A pause. His eyes widened. "You're certain?" He slammed the phone down, the sound jarring. "Captain, get my vehicle. Now. Tell the base sergeant major to meet me out front in 2 minutes. We're going to Shenandoah Range. Full speed." Back at the range, Jackson's patience snapped. "That's it," he declared, stepping into Ezekiel's space. "You're leaving, sir, or I'll have the MPs drag you out." He placed a hand on Ezekiel's shoulder, intending to steer him away. Ezekiel didn't budge. His eyes met Jackson's. Not with anger, but with a quiet, weary resolve. Then sirens pierced the air. A convoy, 2 command Humvees and an MP cruiser, roared down the dirt road, dust billowing. They screeched to a halt, doors flying open. Colonel Reed emerged, his face a storm of controlled rage, followed by the base sergeant major, a towering figure of authority. The range fell silent. The snipers snapped to attention. Jackson froze, his hand still on Ezekiel's shoulder, confusion giving way to dread. Reed ignored him, his eyes locked on Ezekiel. He strode forward and, to everyone's shock, snapped a crisp salute, his posture radiating respect. "Mr. Washington, sir," Reed's voice carried across the range. "I apologize for the disrespect shown to you today. There is no excuse." The snipers gaped. Jackson's face drained of color. The sergeant major leaned toward him, his voice a low growl. "Gunnery Sergeant, what the hell were you thinking?" Reed held his salute until Ezekiel gave a slow nod. Dropping his hand, Reed faced the Marines. "You've been failing this test all day because you think your gadgets make you marksmen. You've been outdone by a mile of air, and in your frustration, your leader disrespected a man whose legacy you can't touch." He gestured to Ezekiel. "This is Chief Warrant Officer 5 Ezekiel Washington, retired, a former tomb guard of the unknown soldier. He later served in Korea, where he wrote the book on extreme distance shooting in chaotic winds. The enemy called him the Shadow of Chosin. His confirmed kill at 1,100 yards in a blizzard, with that very rifle, is still one of the longest in Corps history." Reed turned to Ezekiel. "Mr. Washington, would you honor us by showing these Marines how it's done?" Ezekiel nodded and moved to a firing position with deliberate calm. He settled behind the M1 Garand, resting it on his worn rucksack. His eyes traced the range. Your tech looks for numbers, he said, addressing the silent Marines. You need to read signs. See that mirage over the ridge at 1,200 yards? It's moving left to right, a thermal. But the grass at 1,600 yards is bending toward us. The wind's curling back there. That flag at the target, it's a trick. Aim for the gap in the currents. He adjusted the scope's simple knobs with practiced ease, settled his cheek against the stock, and breathed. The range held its breath with him. The Garand's crack echoed, sharp and clear. For 2 seconds only the wind spoke. Then, a faint ping. The unmistakable sound of steel struck dead center. The Marines erupted in cheers, a mix of awe and relief. Reed's lips twitched with a faint smile before he turned to Jackson, his tone icy. Gunnery Sergeant, your arrogance has failed your men. Your job isn't just to shoot, it's to teach. You had a legend offering wisdom and you treated him like a nuisance. You and your team will report for a week of remedial training in wind reading and fieldcraft. Your instructor will be Mr. Washington, if he'll have you. Ezekiel rose, his joints stiff but his dignity intact. He approached Jackson, who avoided his gaze, and placed a hand on his shoulder. The gear's useful, he said softly, but it doesn't replace this. He tapped his temple. The wind doesn't care about your tech, Gunny. You have to feel it. A memory surfaced. Ezekiel, a young tomb guard, standing rigid at Arlington, the M1 Garand in his hands during a training drill. A grizzled sergeant had handed it to him, saying, "This rifle's honest, son. The wind, the cold, it'll lie. Learn its truth." That rifle, now scarred, was a bridge between generations of discipline and skill. In the weeks that followed, Shenandoah Range became a classroom. Ezekiel, at the center of a semicircle of Marines, including a chastened Jackson, taught them to read the air. Mirage as a map, grass as a guide. The Corps later added the Washington Wind Doctrine to its sniper curriculum. A month later, Jackson, in civilian clothes, spotted Ezekiel at a nursery near Fort Hawthorne, examining herb seedlings. "Mr. Washington," he said, approaching. Ezekiel looked up, his smile warm. "Gunny, how's that basil doing? Saw you planting last week, too tight they'll choke." Jackson smiled, humbled. "Sir, I just wanted to thank you. You taught me more in a week than I've learned in years." Ezekiel nodded. "You're a good Marine, son. You were reading screens, not the air. Pay attention to the small things." He held up a seedling packet, then turned to leave, pausing. "Keep listening, Gunny." Jackson watched him go, a quiet figure who'd reminded a new generation that wisdom, not technology, makes a marksman.